latest polling out today, including New York Times Siena Battleground polls, showing now among likely voters, Trump's up 5 in Arizona. He's up 4 in Georgia. And North Carolina is still tight. He's up 2. It's a state he won by under 75,000 votes in 2020. Harris was up 2 in August there. So it's a 4-point swing in Trump's favor. But this poll was conducted largely before these reports about Mark Robinson, who's the GOP candidate for governor. He's the current lieutenant governor, who is a black man saying he wants to bring back slavery, allegedly in these sex talk rooms. He denies it's him. The evidence that it is him seems pretty good. And saying he likes to watch transgender men, I don't know, trannies have sex with, whatever. It's dark. So there's a question about whether that's going to drag Trump's numbers down in North Carolina, because people are going to be kind of grossed out by the GOP candidate for governor. But zoom out from that particular controversy and tell me what you make of these latest battleground polls, Vivek.
Yeah, so I'm seeing a pattern here, Megyn. This is wearing maybe an older hat of looking at noisy data in other contexts. I think a lot of what happens in the political media in a close race like this is you're going to see a random distribution on any given poll taken over different periods of time. And what you're just seeing is that type of noise, people trying to extrapolate a lot from it. So you're seeing conflicts between NBC's polling and New York Times Siena polling. You're seeing even what you would look at evolved slight shifts in New York Times' own polling over time, when in fact, that's exactly, if you were just doing a random distribution of polling around the noise around an actual mean, the variation you'd see anyway. So that's all a long way of saying that I don't think this polling or the shifts here matter in one direction or another, especially because pollsters have been particularly bad at predicting what Donald Trump's actual supporters are going to do. And so the reality is, I think I almost trust on the ground instincts combined with polling at least as much. And my sense is it's going to be a close race to the finish, but I think that, in the current trajectory, I actually feel very good about Donald Trump. I'm less optimistic about the Republican Senate candidates, and that's kind of my pulse on where things stand in the race right now.
Just to give you an example, Real Clear Politics the other day put out this little chart. This is Pennsylvania, and it was very interesting, Vivek. It was an attempt to look at how the pollsters did when it came to predicting Trump's vote in 16 and 20. And this one just looks at Pennsylvania, so it's just a little snapshot. But Here it is. 2 pollsters overestimated the Trump vote in 2020. Trafalgar by 3.2 and Insider Advantage by 3.2. Every other pollster, Emerson, New York Times, Siena, Quinnipiac, CNN, CBS, F&M, Marist, and Washington Post, all overestimated the other way, and by a lot in some cases. Listen to it, how it went. These are all Democrat overestimations, like that Joe Biden was going to do better than he did. Emerson, 2.8. New York Times, Siena, 4.8, overstating what he actually got, predicting in the last polls. Quinnipiac, plus 5.8 for the Dems. CNN, 8.8. CBS, 5.8. F&M, 4.8. Marist, 3.8. Washington Post, 5.8. So the overwhelming number of polls greatly overestimated how the Democrat would do. I could give you the Dem list in 2016, which was even worse, overestimating Hillary Clinton's performance. I think the big question in this race right now is whether any of these pollsters has corrected or figured out how to correct their terrible polling. Because if they haven't, you're right, Donald Trump should be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think they have, Megyn. And the reality is, it reminds me of, there's an old book called A Random Walk Down Wall Street, something to that effect, which basically concludes that a monkey throwing darts at a dartboard, picking stocks that way, would either equally perform or outperform on a post-fee basis most professional Wall Street analysts or portfolio managers. You see the same thing with respect to the polling. I think a monkey throwing darts on a dartboard might do better than the average pollster here, because the equivalent of the fees in the investment industry are like the biases baked into these mainstream media institutions that inadvertently, even in ways that they don't realize in their sampling, or the kinds of audiences that skew even 1% over from what the general population is, amplify their own internal biases that you see show up in their own publications or their own news stories. So that's, I think, the reality is that these polls aren't worth much. I'm not telling you anything you don't know or your audience doesn't know, but there has historically been a bias, we know, of Trump supporters who are really either pissed off when they get called by pollsters asking what your vote preference is going to be, or certain people who have been afraid to be able to tell another human being they're going to vote for Donald Trump when, in fact, that's exactly what they're going to do. Now, the counter argument for the other side in this election, just to sort of, if you're playing the horse race analysis game here, the counter argument is I think that culture of fear around saying that you're going to vote for Trump has actually waned significantly. You have a lot of people coming out publicly, even used to be on the center left, saying they're going to vote for Donald Trump this time around. To me, that's also a signal that the public unacceptability of voting for Trump has also waned, which means that effect on the polls may have also be a little bit less pronounced in the case of people being unlikely to tell a pollster that they're voting for Trump. So that could argue in favor of the polls being slightly more accurate this time. But I'm not a horse race analyst person. As you know, I love talking about what I think should happen, what I think is the future direction of the country, and what it ought to be. And I think that the reality is experts and non-experts alike probably have the same worth of their opinion in analyzing these polls, which the answer is should be not very much.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is an interesting piece of information in there about whether the debate helped or hurt Kamala Harris, even though most people believe that she won the debate, according to the various polls that have come out. Here's how it looks in Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. This is according to the New York Times and their poll. Pre-debate, Harris was up 5 in Arizona. Post-debate, Trump is up 5 in Arizona. That's a 10-point swing. Pre-debate, Trump was up 4 in Georgia. Post-debate, Trump is up 4 in Georgia. So she didn't gain anything. North Carolina, pre-debate, Harris was up 2. Post-debate, Trump is up 3. So it was a 5-point swing in his favor. So, I mean, it's one of those things where all the media elites told us that he lost, that she crushed him, that she should ask for 10 debates. But the critical swing state voters, at least in the Sun Belt, did not see it that way. Or at least if they did see it that way, they weren't moved to start voting for her. If anything, they were moved to start voting for Donald Trump. And that's why this is kind of curious. She did come out and say, I want another debate. She refused to do the Fox News debate. She refused to do an NBC News debate. Now suddenly she says, now what is it? September 23rd today? I want to do a CNN debate. I want to do a CNN debate. And Trump came out and said the following in SOT 22.
They would like to do another debate. Although, good entertainment value. A lot of people say, oh, do it, it's great entertainment. I've already done 2. The problem with another debate is that it's just too late. Voting has already started. She's had her chance to do it with Fox. Fox invited us on, and I waited, and they turned it down. But now she wants to do a debate right before the election with CNN because she's losing badly. It's like a fighter. She sees the pulse. She sees what's happening. She's losing badly, but it's like a fighter who goes into the ring and gets knocked out. The first thing he says is, I want a rematch. I want a rematch.
So is it the right move given the analysis that preceded that soundbite?
I think there's a couple things going on. First of all, with this idea that she won the first debate, I think what many people say when they say she won the first debate is she won relative to the expectations they had for her, which is different than how people actually vote. People don't vote based on whether or not someone exceeded their own low expectations for that person. That goes for whether or not you won that particular fight, that particular venue, or that particular debate. That's why you didn't see it really translate into any meaningful, maybe any bump at all in the polling. Now, there's 2 things about the debate here worth watching, and I think this is why Kamala Harris wants to do another one, is that even relative to the number of people who watched the debate, a much larger number of people actually continue to read the media's distillation of the debate. So no matter what happens at the debate, whether it goes well for Donald Trump or well for Kamala Harris, we can pretty darn well count on, especially close to the election, the media's distillation of it, which will last about a week, being positive for Kamala Harris. So she's smart to ask for another debate because no matter how it goes, the reality is it's going to be at least positive, even if artificially generated news cycles around her, right ahead of when most people are going to vote on Election Day itself. So I think Donald Trump's playing this correctly. If it was a little bit differently, if it was a little bit different type of debate, I think the calculus could shift, right? If this were not a debate in a closed room with 2 moderators likely to be biased, she says she wants CNN again. CNN already did a debate. Without an audience, that's one thing. We've already seen that. We've seen that twice, once with Biden, once with Kamala Harris. I think there's a strong case that Donald Trump has to make, which is what more are voters going to get out of a repeat of that same setting. versus doing what they've done every presidential debate cycle before the COVID-influenced 2020 election, which is to have a town hall format, one where you're actually talking to voters, where voters are asking the questions directly. One of the things that does, Megyn, is that actually avoids a little bit, dilutes out some of the media bias. So as much as you complain about the moderators, there's only so much they can do if the actual questions are coming from voters. That, I think, could be a powerful and interesting new format that's better for voters. You make a good case that's good for the voting process itself. But I think it also would be a format in which Donald Trump would actually shine and likely mop the floor with Kamala Harris if I had to make a prediction.
So I agree. Did you know that there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right. There is still a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months in office. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like we did during COVID. But there is hope. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting the word MK to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax-advantaged status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to potentially tank the dollar even further. Protect your financial future now by diversifying. Text MK to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.